by the way, we're going to close for 5 days a year and your fees are going to go up.
A little bit of a spicy one.
Oh, God. How many poos do you think the preschool room do? I emailed saying thank you for your incontinence.
No, damn it.
Dangling a little financial carrot in front of parents is often quite good. So
You have to be the villain and the hero.
Yeah.
So you make the unpopular choices.
not many parents will ever argue if your end goal is to improve outcomes for children.
Hello!
It is the third episode, Julia.
Welcome
I've prepared
back.
some cliches.
Oh, okay, I'm ready.
Third time's a charm.
Yep.
3 times lucky.
Yep.
I think I've got both of those wrong. Third is magic in some way.
3 is the magic
Correct.
number. Yeah.
And 3 strikes and you're out.
No.
No.
Not that one.
That would be... Okay. Well, forgetting the last one, this is the Tiny Chair Pod, sponsored by Family, and we are very excited for this because there's going to be 2 times the Matts this week. I'm Matt,
I'm Julia.
and we have a wonderful guest this week called Matt Martin, don't we, Julia?
He is amazing. He's going to be talking to us all about those kind of tricky decisions that you have to make when you're in leadership in the early years. All of those things that you need to convey to the staff and to the parents and how you're going to make it better for the children. All of those changes and improvements and how to do it.
Yeah, lots of ideas to tweak your business. And even if you're not, on the business end of early years, I still think it's a great episode with lots of really interesting learnings about how to work well in early years. I can't wait to get into it. Should we do it?
I think we should.
Let's go.
Matt has worked with us before, but not everybody out there will know who he is.
No, not famous, is he?
Well,
He's
not
about to be.
yet.
About to be.
I would love it if you would introduce him in the most flowery and flattering way possible, please.
Absolutely. Well, Julia and I met Matt 3 years ago when he emailed us to complain.
Yeah.
Pretty exciting. We wrote this Respect the Sector report, all about how we're going to change the world. And I wrote it down because it was so lovely. He said, sorry to vent, I just find it frustrating when I see the same non-groundbreaking ideas from companies.
Yeah. And
I
I
will
said,
note at this point, he misspelled breaking. He spelt it like
did he?
the car brake.
Well-
so that made me feel better.
Do you know what? We read that and we thought this is someone we want to be friends with. We want to
100%.
speak to more.
So what followed was this long email with suggestions about the Dutch ratio laws, max hours in a setting, transitions, and so much more. And I think we rightly said, this is a man we need to spend more time with. So what we found out was that Matt was currently a business manager of a group of Scottish settings called the Little Beehive nurseries. And he's now been in the sector for over 10 years, we noted, Matt. That's kind of crazy,
He's a
isn't it?
veteran.
Yeah.
And he has an exciting project coming up that we might tease a little bit later. But I do just want to say, despite complaining with very long emails, Matt is genuinely one of the most original thinkers I've ever come across in the sector. And you could see that in that first email. He had all these brilliant ideas for how we're going to change everything from fees to processes to ratios and the systems that underpin it all. And I'm so happy we get to hear more of his bold ideas to change the world today. And most importantly, he is the tallest man to ever visit the family office. Mikkel, I think you can put the photo up here in post-production. Very, very embarrassing how short he made me and Julia look. So thank goodness he's not on these tiny chairs. That would be bad.
Yep. And despite introducing himself with a complaint, he is actually a very lovely man.
He
So we're
is a
very,
very
very
lovely
happy to
man.
have him on the Tiny Chair Pod with us today.
Welcome, Matt.
Welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me. First of all, so much to unpack.
So much time.
You know what? Spelling, never my strong point. ChatGPT changed my life.
Great.
So
You could have been on last week's episode about
I know,
AI.
honestly, I listened to it so intently. It was great. I'm really glad to be here and spend time with you two is always a bonus. So yeah, I mean, the email most certainly wasn't intended to be to be mean, but I think that the root cause of a lot of things I do is because I get so frustrated with sort of the ins and outs of the industry that and it's why I love it at the same time. But it's definitely started a good relationship between us, and
Absolutely.
I couldn't ask for a better little group for us.
All
so.
my favourite friends started off by complaining about me.
Yeah.
So it's
But
a common theme.
I will say we took it in the spirit with which it was intended.
Oh, yes.
So we knew that you were on the right path. You had some good ideas.
Good.
Now here we are.
And now here we
Here we
are.
are.
And
Yeah,
Matt,
great.
so before we get into the meat of it, I did I wanted to do some research and see if you were anywhere on Google, and found there's an ice hockey player, isn't there?
Yeah, there is.
How do you feel about him? He's really handsome as well.
Yeah, he's unfortunately not the most handsome Matt Martin in the country or the world. So I thought I had that accolade, but apparently not. No, I do my best to try and stay off of Google. So
Yeah, it's good. It's good
I
decision.
chat GPT my name every so often to see if it's managed to find anything, but not yet. So
No. Damn it. Okay.
What a hobby.
What a hobby.
yeah,
Love
yeah,
it.
yeah.
We should have had that as one of the questions.
Let's get into it, Julia.
I think we should. So, I like to start our podcast episodes with something called early years icks. Before we get into it, do you know what an ick is?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I know. I'm very aware of what an ick is. Been called one
Oh, wow. Wow. Okay.
by my current girlfriend. By the way.
I get it.
We're getting into the meat of it ever so early today. For those of you who don't know, ick is something that makes you feel a little bit... It's not something that's dangerous or harmful. We're not talking about things that are genuinely really bad. Just something that makes you go... Bleh. So, Matt, what are your early years icks?
I'm glad you've started with this because I've listened to the previous ones and it's obviously been
he's
a
prepared.
theme. So I had a little
He's done his homework.
I had a little knockout round of icks because I could sit here and list off probably quite a lot. As you know, I'm prone to a moan.
You had to do like an ick bracket sort of thing.
It was his last 16 knockout. And we had to get to the finalist. And you obviously again previous had some great ones. So like the Tabards, was close finalist. I have to admit.
Interesting.
But I my biggest ick, and you know what, it's definitely hypocritical of me because we still use this language ourselves, but I really, really dislike or have an ick for the language used around describing job titles in the industry. Like practitioner or officer or nursery nurse.
Ooh, nursery nurse, big ick.
Yeah, and I just think that maybe 10, 20 years ago, that was where the industry was, but we've moved on so much, we've professionalised so much. We're educators now, or they're educators now, and it's just something that I just feel like really should change. Hypocritical of us, we sort of did a little trial and changed the job titles here and there, and then we put the job adverts up for these jobs, and we were getting no applicants. And we were like, what's going on?
Early years ninja, that kind of thing.
Yeah, early years ninja. No, I think we went for just an early years educator. I think it was as simple as that. But people just weren't applying for the job because it's such a colloquialism within the industry that's what people, look for. And, it might be fine, but I just, really wish that we professionalised those names. And It just gets under my skin every so often. It just annoys me.
I totally agree. And I've been through the same sort of transition myself because back when I was working as an educator, we were called practitioners. And so I in the very earliest videos that I did here at Family, I described myself as a level 3 qualified practitioner. Yep. And now I've moved on to saying educator because you're right, it does sound so much more appropriate for the work that's actually done. So I'm glad that...
And the language really does matter. I totally agree. We often talk about childcare and how when we should use childcare because absolutely you are caring for children, but it's so much more than that, right? Yep. And there's so much language difficulties in the early years that we need to get over. I totally agree.
Yep.
All right, quick
That
fire
was a
round
good one.
time. It's very good. Seriously.
I'm pleased. Quick fire?
Quick fire. Do I go first?
Go on, you go first.
All right. So, Matt, we have some non-early years listeners listening to our early years podcasts. Shout out the non-early years gang. We would love you to share something. You're a bit of an outsider to the sector. Share something about the early years that would surprise non-early years sector people listening.
I sort of come from an abstract angle. I didn't start in the industry as a practitioner or however it was. I came in from like a business perspective.
Educator.
Sorry, honestly, I've immediately done it. Biggest hypocrite there is. So I always when I'm speaking to people who are also maybe adjacent to the industry, maybe bank or whoever it might be, I always sort of like preface that conversation with like, have you any experience in the industry? Did you have children go through it? Did you, when was the last time you were at nursery? 30 years ago. And
that's very personal. Thank you very much.
but it's because there's so many different things that I think people just either assume or they still think it was like when they were at nursery 25, 30 years ago or however it was. So yeah, I just think it's probably hashing the same thing I just said, but it's probably the professionalization that surprises people. Quite a lot in terms of, the regulation requirement now, the volume of, paperwork and everything that goes around that and how it's grown over the last 10, 15 years. I think it surprises a lot of people actually, I think when they come and they think they're going to go to nursery and they drop their kid off, that's sort of it. They can, switch their brain off. But there's so much more that goes on behind the scene from a professional capacity that they just don't really consider. Yeah, I've got friends who are having children and they were they were looking at what nursery to send their child to, and I was just out of curiosity, like, oh, what are you considering? And they were like, oh, this one. And I was like, well, let me go and have a look at it for you. And they're like, what do you mean? And I'm
Man
like,
on the inside.
yeah, and I was like, well, let me go and check. Like, I'll read their inspection reports. I'll go and have like just a general like a vibe. Came back and it wasn't maybe as good as they thought it was. And they were like, I didn't know you could do that. And I'm like, what do you mean you didn't know you can do that? And I just think a lot of people are still in that sort of like 10, 15, 20, or when they were at nursery, they still think it's exactly the same.
Yeah.
And it's not anymore. There's a whole sort of ecosystem around it now that's, so much more. And I just think there's, a bit of an issue in terms of getting that across to people.
I recently, sort of the first friend from my friendship group to have a little one, and she messaged me like, oh, I'm putting my child in this nursery. And I was like, oh, that's great. Like, I know that group really well. I actually know the CEO of that group. It's a great nursery. And she was like, you have no idea how calming that is, because it's also, it is hard to navigate all of this stuff and that fear that you've, not made the right choice.
It's certainly what, if you, I suppose like any industry, if you've no experience in that sector, then you necessarily don't know what to look for or what's expected. So, I think family do a very good job in bridging that gap between nursery and parent care. But
Thank you very much.
Yeah,
First
you're welcome.
plug. Thanks.
First plug. But I think it's just so much more to it that a lot of parents just haven't really dug into yet. So yeah, definitely just the whole thing. The professionalization over the last 15 years is a big shock to a lot of people, I think.
Beautiful.
Julia, over to you.
It is quick fire though,
Yeah.
so if you could...
That was slow fire.
Yeah,
Sorry.
that was
Very
extremely
slow
slow.
fire.
So we can't stop bullying the guests.
I know.
Is that right?
I feel like we know Matt too well. We're just going to be too mean to him. This is
dear.
not good.
So if you have 10 minutes now to give a TED talk, any subject, but you get no preparation, you have to do it, what's it going to be on?
Oh gosh. You know what? We just spoke about this before coming on, that I wouldn't publicly say it, but it has to be Dungeons and Dragons.
Oh wow, he's done it.
I know I've done it. I know. I shouldn't have done that. But
Can we have like a dun 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 sound effect or something to go with that?
Michael, can you sort that out? Yeah.
give me 10 minutes and a microphone. I'll blow everyone away.
Absolutely groundbreaking.
That is groundbreaking. That is a hot take.
Are you looking for new people to take part in your campaigns at the moment?
Always. We've got the setup now. We can have a little online session. We'll get that sorted.
Perfect.
Oh, well, that's the next podcast
Maybe there's like
sorted,
an early
yeah.
years Dungeons and Dragons kind of crossover.
Yeah.
I like it.
I imagine that Venn diagram is just probably the three of us in the middle, maybe.
Could well be just you. Right, so you obviously work on more the business side of early years, but if you had to switch places with an EY educator for a day, what would be your go-to activity?
Oh, you know what? When I was younger, there's a funny story about this actually. That I loved like construction.
Nice.
Sawing, hammering, all of these things. So get me in like the woodwork area or outside building something is where I would be. Probably high risk, but that would be my go-to sort of zone.
And excellent at doing the tool stuff that needs to be done.
Yeah, I mean, I would just be used to get things off shelves. That's all my job would be.
Yeah, makes sense.
I mean, if you're going to be 6'7"
Whatever.
or whatever, what are you going to do?
What are you
right?
What are you gonna do?
Is it me?
It's
me.
you.
So this is a little bit of a spicy one. Share a time that you messed something up. What happened?
You know what? Back on the spelling malarkey here. This is a running theme now. I emailed. I think we were closed for like a snow day, like across all of our locations. So it was like a blanket email to every parent, and thank you. I think I emailed everyone. Thank you for understanding or your consideration or whatever in this matter. But I emailed saying thank you for your incontinence.
Oh gosh.
To about every 400 family of parents and carers, grandparents and everybody, and I got a few emails back saying, I assume you meant this, and I was like, I did mean that, thank you for understanding. It was before the time of family where I could go and edit the post really quickly. It was all on email, so it was out there, couldn't do anything, just had to ride that wave.
And then you replied to those emails being like, yeah, thank you for pointing it out, thanks for your incontinence. No!
Yeah, exactly.
Me and Julia have sent a lot of emails over our time. I'm sure we've both had. I've definitely had some bad
definitely
email mistakes.
Yeah, I've definitely sent something too quickly and then been like, oh. Although now you can do that little recall thing.
Undo function.
Yeah. Oh.
I love that. Is maybe the greatest invention I think of the last 20 years is the undo function on
After
email.
family.
After family, yeah.
Nope.
After family.
Not after family. No, prefer
Wow.
the undo function. Sorry, guys.
Oh my gosh. Okay. After
I'm doing more of a plug here.
Of that absolute bombshell.
Yep.
So click your fingers and make one change that's going to improve the sector.
Oh, click my fingers.
Just one.
Just one. I think we mentioned it previously, but I think reduced expectation of operating hours for staff and for children. I think the expectation of being in for that long for both parties is quite demanding. So I'd love a more condensed day. Would be great.
Makes a lot of sense. And it's really interesting. It's something we've talked a lot about here because obviously family is HQ'd here in Denmark. And it's such a difficult topic because it's so cultural, right? It relates to like what is the workplace culture in that country, like how willing are employers to let people go home earlier to pick up children and so on. And I think in a lot of the UK, we just don't have that culture yet, and that's what forces these super long hours on a lot of nurseries, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's definitely, we understand that our customer, the parent care, is paying for a service for care, and we have to sort of do our best to navigate what that sort of requirement is in the community. But at the same time, we also have staff and team members who they want to have work-life balance and they want to be able to do their job to their highest level. We've got children who want to be in nursery but also want to be at home with their families. So it's getting that balance is really at the moment quite challenging. And if I could click my fingers and change it tomorrow and everyone understood and there was no complaints, do that.
I think
more
that's
of a societal change, I think.
Yeah, sorry. I've done a much bigger one there.
I like that. I think that's a great transition to move on to the meat of the podcast because it's all about like the big things that we want to change. And I think, Matt, in general, we want to talk to you a little bit about, I think you're really fantastic at thinking about these bigger changes and how you put them out, and we want to get into that. But maybe you could start by explaining a little bit about your entryway into the sector. I think you definitely have that, as you've mentioned a few times, sort of outsider's perspective.
Yeah.
And I wonder how it was that you got into the sector. It
was primarily just working in the office, admin. Basically, I mean, this has just been basically what I've done, and it's transitioned into sort of covering, working in that office, doing every job under the sun, and getting frustrated, and realizing there's changes to be made, and that maybe having that outside perspective allowed me to question, why do we do it that way? And they go, and the answer is often, I'm not sure actually. And then I go, well, can we look at it a different way? So work from that all the way up to where I am at the moment. And it's an industry that I would encourage anybody to get into. Any level, because you will learn so much about not only yourself and your business, but it's such an underdeveloped industry that there's so much that we can do and change, and it just needs people to actually go, well, we can do that and we can give it a go. And the industry only 30 years old, so there's it's still young in reality. So yeah, it's there's so much that we can still do, and it's a really exciting sort of place to be.
I love that perspective.
That's very upbeat, isn't it?
It is, and it's so empowering because I think so many people in the sector, they feel like
jaded?
Understandably, jaded. Like there's nothing we can do. Things have been difficult for so long, but I find that you've often had that perspective of like, what can we do to take control of this situation? We can't fix everything, but what? How have you managed to kind of keep that outside perspective, despite now being, I'm sorry, but definitely an insider after 10 years? How do you keep that perspective?
I think that photo that you're going to show is of us in the family office, and I had slightly longer hair, and I definitely was less. I was definitely
more
less
like the ice hockey player, actually.
Yeah, I was less grey as well. So yeah, definitely been in a while now. I just think there's always something that can be done, and I think I've been very lucky in that I can sort of list off the last 5-6 years of things we've implemented and changed, and we've always kind of been moving forward in that aspect. So I can understand that if you've not had that, it can feel a bit jaded potentially. You're kind of just rumbling on. But I think I've been very lucky that the company here are very eager to sort of make those positive changes and are keen to explore them. It's a difficult thing to make a tough decision. I think especially for single sites or small nursery groups, that's who are running on fine margins anyway. Making that decision to really radically potentially change how you operate is a big risk potentially. Well, it's not a big risk, but it can feel like a big risk.
Yeah.
So we've been very lucky that we've made decisions. We've always had an end goal and a positive outlook for them. So it's just, I think it's just been exciting to be in the industry for that reason. And yeah, there's still so much more to do and that can be done. And I think it's when I emailed you was definitely because everyone looks at, I think, one big problem and I kind of say, well, there's definitely that very big problem, definitely, but there's also loads of little problems that we can actually fix a lot quicker.
Yeah.
And if we'd sort of all focused on those, and we all, maybe had a cohesive vision for that, I think that we would be able to change the industry in a more positive way, in a much faster capacity, and maybe focus on the bigger issues over a longer period of time.
I love that. I mean, with that in mind, can you give us an example of some of the more kind of drastic or scarier or potentially riskier changes that you've made and how you sort of went about that?
Did my homework, and so we know not only did I spend my night doing
the
ick bracket, but I also the bracket. Yeah, there we go. Take all of the icks you've had in the podcast series, put them in a bracket, and put them on family, and see which one's voted to be the number one ick. Okay.
You need to hire this guy.
Yeah.
He's giving us content ideas. He's coming out of our jobs.
Sorry, that my biggest changes, right? So, well, first of all, I know that Julia, you're a big fan of the living wage, right? In terms of when we implemented that, that was one of the first things I sort of looked to do. I think I was 20 or 19 years old, not a grey hair in sight, and and although that wasn't necessarily like, it's now normal, commonplace, it's part of the funding criteria, but that was about 2 years before that was announced. So, going to the directors and saying, I promise you that by increasing your largest outgoing further, we're going to have better quality, better retention, and it'll pay dividends in the long run. So that one was difficult to sell to the directors who were on board, but then you have to go to the parents and say, we're going to increase your fees not only by the normal rate that we would, but we're also going to start adding on a little bit more over a couple of years or 3 years to try and catch up with the real living wage. And what you're getting isn't necessarily changing.
Yeah.
You're still getting the care from 8 till 6, but you're going to be paying a little bit more. Now, what your child's receiving might be better or will be better, and you might have better peace of mind that we're training and retaining better staff. But realistically, actually, what you're getting is staying the exact same. So it's quite those sort of things are quite hard sells. When you're making internal changes for the client, who I call the child, in this case, they're receiving the service, but the customer is not necessarily, the parent isn't necessarily getting a benefit for the cost increase, basically. So that was difficult. Another one that we just did last year that was probably, in terms of fending off parents, was we introduced in service days, which I recommend anybody does. I think it's the biggest impact we've had in terms of quality of provision is that we now shut for 5 days per year, and our staff come in and we train, we get the nursery sorted out, we get set up for the next term. It's so great, and I love going in and seeing the staff in the relaxed environment, and they're all together and they're all training, and it's just such a really important thing that we've done. But again, going to parents and saying, by the way, we're going to close for 5 days a year, and your fees are going to go up. So what you're getting is less, but what your children are going to get is going to be better, and we're going to have train and retain better staff. So it's kind of that balance of understanding the pros and cons of what it is and who you're having to explain it to. So yeah, there's two examples of things that I couldn't go to certain locations for a while where parents might see me the volume of emails I was getting. So yeah, that was definitely difficult.
Can I ask Matt on that, because I think that communication piece is so interesting. I guess part of it is, of course, convincing people who can afford to part with their hard-earned cash. And as there, you can do the selling. Okay, maybe you get some parents who are like, what, I do understand it. I can afford this extra, and I will be getting something out of it, even though it's a little bit of a hard sell. How do you balance communicating with those kind of parents and then the kind of parents who or maybe whether they say or not, it's not a situation of like they actually are scraping through so much. Maybe that increase is genuinely too much for them. Like, how do you balance those two things?
We are very, we do everything we can to keep our fees, as low as possible. We're definitely not the cheapest. We're definitely not the most expensive. Some eye-watering fees some places, and I do feel for parents. It's sometimes you can, and I think you just have to remember that. Unfortunately, sell it to some families. You can do everything you can to support them, and we would never ever want to see a child leave because we outpriced them, and I consider that education poverty. And it's always at the forefront of our decision making. We've done everything we can over the last 5 years to become as efficient as possible in how we operate internally, and made some pretty big changes in how we operate internally. to try and become more efficient so that we can offset those costs over the long run. And we were very lucky this year that because of the decisions that we've sort of made historically, the national insurance didn't really impact us too much. It was still an increase. It was, it was about, I think it was about 5-6% increase in the end. But, I know and some around us were up to 10, 11, 12%. And one that was down there was 15%. But I think the decisions that we've maybe made over the last 5 years and sort of becoming as efficient as possible have allowed us to mitigate that. So it's definitely difficult, and I feel like that's probably one of the biggest barriers for single site operators is that they're making decisions that impact their community that they live in. It might be their neighbour, it might be someone they know. So it's so difficult to make those decisions potentially. So it's definitely hard. There's no denying that.
With that in mind, can you give us some examples of some of the ways that you've improved efficiency? I imagine people have heard that and thought, oh, how can I do that?
Definitely. I mean, there's things, there's things that are really obvious. I think the people listening to this podcast going, we already do all these things. And I'm like, yeah, I know you do. You should have told me. You should have told me 5 years ago. And but I think it's just like the most important thing for me in when you're looking at efficiency is the ratios within the nursery and how many children you've got and of what age and what how that's laid out in the nursery, because if you're a preschool only and you've got 8 kids, for example, and you just run a small preschool, you need one member of staff. You charge £60 a day, you pay that staff member the real living wage, £12.60, whatever it is. The wage percentage off of revenue for that, you're going to be about 26%. So that's very low. If you just run a baby nursery, right, and you just had babies, you had 8 of them as well, you and Matt are in direct competition for some reason, don't know why.
I feel like I'm not going to win that one.
But yeah, possibly. If you had the same 8 as babies, you would need 3 members of staff, and all of a sudden your staff percentage is 78%. So it's looking at how your nursery is laid out. Making sure that your ratios aren't too bottom heavy. You've got enough of a top heavy nursery that you're not just immediately causing yourself an issue with in the long term. So we've standardized our nurseries to be 59 places, 32 preschool, 15 toddlers, and 12 babies, because we reduction in ratios throughout the ages. And then we start looking at all the other efficiencies that if I offer a variety of sessions, we used to offer every session under the sun. We used to offer mornings, afternoons, nursery days, extended mornings, early finishes, early starts, all these things, all these crazy things, right? And then the problem is that you've got all these sessions and they're kind of blocking each other. If you've got somebody in the morning, you can't sell your afternoon, but then somebody phones up for a full day, then you can't sell them that because that person's in the morning and you've got an afternoon sitting there. Or we used to do wraparound. That used to really annoy me. Parents would pick us up in the morning. Parents would drop us off in the morning, and then we would take them to school nursery at 9 or 9:30 or whatever it was, and then we'd pick them up again at 3:30, and they'd come back to us. And it was like, well, that's great for the parent. I love that. But also, between 9 and 3:30, we can't sell a session because we've got this kid coming back. So it was all about what we did is we used to have 9 different sessions. We used to have term time, all these things. What I did was say, well, let's go to 2. Let's have 2 sessions, full year. And instead of asking the parents what they wanted, which, you should obviously collaborate with your parents, I understand that. But we actually went to staff and said, what shifts do you want to work? That's the most important thing here is what shift do you guys want to work? And, they want to work at 8 till 6 and they want to work at 8 till 4. Right, well, there's your sessions. Easy. All of a sudden now I have 2 sessions to sell for my families. You can either come 8 till 6 or 8 till 4. And what we do is we sort of cap the number of places for each one. So when 2 staff members go home at 4 p.m, 16 kids go home as well from the preschool room. And we sort of regulate it like that. So it's as efficient as we can make it, basically, through that. So it's
interesting.
It's just, it's a lot of sort of management from our perspective, but obviously family makes that so much easier.
Oh, I love that.
He's so good. Second plug, yeah.
I really want to, as the kids say, double click on that a little bit. I think that
no kids say that.
No kids? Do adults say that?
I don't think anyone says
that. No one
that.
says that? Okay.
Anyone says that, no.
As I just said, I'd like to double click on that. I'm really interested because I wonder if there's a few people out there. I think quite understandably people kind of have this like flexibility creep. That idea that we're trying to offer what we can to parents, and we start off with 3 sessions, and then people are like, oh, could I do a little earlier? Okay, now we have 4 sessions. Oh, could I, this person, and then as you say, before you know it, you've got 16 sessions. Now, you found yourself in that situation and you managed to handle getting down to 2 again. And I'm sure maybe there's some people listening to this thinking, I'm in that situation. I know it's not good, but I've given this flexibility to parents. How do I take it away? I'd love you to just talk me through how you went about that process of actually solving that problem, because that's a tricky one.
It definitely is. I mean, this comes back to the, who you're delivering the service for. You're delivering it for a parent or a carer who's got a care requirement. So and they're the one paying the bill. So it's natural for you to sort of, if a parent says, well, I'll give you an extra £10 a day if I can do this session. You go, oh, okay, perfect, yeah, fine. But then you don't think about the implications down the line before you know you've got
right, the
16
long-term
sessions.
issues of how these things stack up over time.
Exactly, yeah. Before you know you've got 15 kids arriving at 15 different times, and it's a total headache. What we did, or what we definitely did it in stages. We used to open up at 7:15 in the morning. We sort of removed that first, and we had back and forth with parents about it. We knew it was going to be challenging for some parents. We gave them as much notice as possible. We did just cut that in the end. We just said we can't offer this anymore, unfortunately. For a lot of sessions.
Can I ask about that? Sorry to jump in, Matt, but about that decision to first of all cut that first session. You've communicated it. Presumably, some parents have said, "Well, we're going to find another nursery." Yep. What was the actual implication of it when you put it through?
We had one parent leave. So from 300 plus children, or 300 odd children, we had one parent leave, and they genuinely needed to commute and get drop off at that time in the morning, and it's a tough decision to make. But in the long term, for us to become more viable for the current families, but for the next 10 years, we had to make that decision. So it was that was tough, but thankfully we only had one. But I remember the conversation at the time, the director saying, we've got 5 parents who use this, what if they all leave? And I'm like, well, even if they do, long-term benefit of this is going to be much better by getting rid of this session, but for the other sessions, what we did was we just phased them out, which is a little bit of a sort of slower roll, but we wanted to basically honour contracts for parents who had signed up on those. And we phased them out over a couple of years, or 3 or 4 years. I mean,
so sort of no longer offered them to new parents,
to new families, exactly. Yeah. So we know it was 4 years ago or 5 years ago that we stopped mornings and afternoons, and we still have one child on a morning. So and as we always laugh when we pull up the room planner, because there's just that one still sitting there.
Just rename it like Charlie's session or something.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So
gosh, when he goes off to school, that's celebration in the office.
Yes, exactly. So yeah, it was a mixture of plaster off, but also a phase out, and just as much communication and transparency as to why you're doing it. And the long term benefits is really important. What we found.
That's really interesting.
It really is, and I think you've touched on it a little bit about kind of transparency and setting the expectations, and phasing it out for new parents joining, because for them, obviously, that's what they've signed up to. That's what they're getting, and that's how it's always been from their perspective. And I just think it's so interesting how we've talked a little bit about it before, but how different it is here in Denmark, because pretty well all early years childcare and nursery sessions are set up that way. Yeah. So you sign up your child for early years. Yeah,
you're paying for a month. Basically.
You pay for a month. Yeah, the settings are open sort of 8-ish thereabouts to 4-ish thereabouts, and you use the time or you don't. And however, the caveat is it is probably about 75% cheaper here. So apologies for all our parents listening, but that's how it makes sense. And I think there is sort of an expectation setting exercise there.
And it's back to that social issue as well. It's like you're going to leave. You're going to leave the office at 3 to go and pick up your child. I think in lots of places in the UK that would be no.
Absolutely not. I mean, I really feel for parents in the UK trying to make this work, and also, as you say, settings trying to be as sustainable as possible and give an environment that's the least disruptive and the most conducive to a good education for young children. And I mean, it's hard to balance that, to make those two things compatible, right? Yeah,
we certainly found that, dangling a little financial carrot in front of parents is often quite good. So...
Do not be dangling that financial carrot at me.
Yeah, sorry, apologies. Yeah, so last year we introduced the 5:30 closure, right? And this is another sort of big decision that we kind of made, that we constantly definitely always be speaking to your team about what they're not enjoying, what they're enjoying about their job, and what we found was that there's just so much work to do now out with actually delivering that childcare or that education to children. That they needed time, and that's the first port of call is to say, well, let's bring in another staff member, let's bring another team member to let them off the floor, etc., etc. And that has a significant financial impact on parents. I think that we sort of calculated that another one additional team member in the service would increase fees to parents by 5%.
Right.
So
to sort of go supernumerary and basically have situations where staff can come out of ratio.
Yeah, exactly. And so if we were 2 staff members to give all the rooms that time to have that flexibility, you're talking a 10% increase or there and thereabouts. So that was a big sort of, we can't really do that to parents. We can't they're already really at the limit in society of what we're charging. So we thought, well, how else can we deliver that time they need? 2 hours a week would be great. And it was again family, obviously. I went on and I looked at you can get a registration report. Not registration report, like a drop off and pick up report, and it tells you exactly what time they were dropped off and picked up. And I thought, is there anywhere in there that I can identify, a smaller number of children in the service that we can maybe look at changing how we operate a little bit? And it transpired that between 5:30 and 6. We were probably at about 15% occupancy, right? So which is a lot quieter, and that was sort of quite average across the week. Phoned the managers and said, look, how's it? How many kids you got in at this time? Do you think? What's it like? What are our parents? Where are they? And the majority was saying, well, it's quieter, but from our perspective, it's really frustrating because we're looking out the window and the parents are having a chat. Right? There's like 5 parents standing there, and they're paying for the service till 6, so they'll sit and they'll have a little natter and this, that, and the next thing. So we sort of made the decision that what we were going to do was announce we're going to close at 5:30. Close being in air quotes because we don't actually close. But what we did is we actually allow parents to book on until 6 p.m. because our staff are still in the building if they need to, if they're running late, if they do have work commitments or whatever it might be. So I looked up prior to coming on, and in April last year we had 140 children in the month of April stay past 5:30, and this April it's only 20.
Wow.
So there's been no financial impact for us, and the parents, when you say to them, you can save a little bit of money here by not coming in till 6. It's amazing how they don't sit and chat anymore. So it was. That's been a massive improvement for us as well in terms of giving that staff the half an hour at the end of the day for decompression. Have a chat themselves, but also finish that paperwork, get the room set up and stuff like that. So
Brilliant.
That was another sort of big sort of change in terms of, if you look back 5-6 years ago, we were 7:15 till 6. Now we're 8 till 5:30.
It's really interesting, those sort of ideas of when can you nudge people, when do you have to force people, how can you move people in the right direction. Really interesting. I wanted to also talk about that question of communication. You've talked a lot about making sure you lead with the why. I think it's so relevant, particularly to a lot of our English listeners right now who are going through a lot of the difficulties around some of the government changes and justifications around 30 hours funding. It's a really key time to communicate, this issue of consumables and how you make sure that you communicate to parents that, while it is an option for you to opt out of these consumables, we can't really offer you to bring in, really managing this kind of line between transparency and trying to be as clear as you possibly can. I wonder if you have any tips, like very concrete tactical tips for how you communicate these kind of difficult issues and the why behind a lot of these changes.
The first port of call is obviously getting the information out there in as clear and concise a way as possible, either in a document or a PDF or whatever it is. You get that information out there, but then don't stop there. It's important that the biggest challenge is either misunderstanding, miscommunication, or a very simple question that a parent just needs a bit of reassurance on. And it's to open up those channels to allow you to do that is really important. So I'm a big fan of having physically chatting to parents. I feel like it's much easier to to get across or understand their concerns a bit better, and allows me to basically try and chat to them.
They see that you're flexible and that you might actually change to the feedback.
Exactly. There's definitely a point where if their concerns are unresolvable, there's not so much you can do, but at least you've understood what their concerns have come from. And it's you've really got to the bottom of it. I'm not a fan of sort of group parent meetings. I think what parent forums are probably more known as. I often feel like they kind of just can escalate or misunderstandings, or somebody didn't consider that, they didn't understand it that way, and it kind of just gets a little bit out of hand.
Yeah.
So I think dealing with people individually, either over, a Zoom or a phone call or in person. And then my final tranche of getting communication out there is if there's a running thread between all the concerns, I then go back again to all the families, either in a letter or whatever it might be, to address that this has been raised and this is what we're going to do to change it, or this is why we can't change it. Because if 5 parents have thought of it, maybe other parents have thought of it. So it's kind of like that staggered
tip of the iceberg, yeah.
Mass communication, direct intervention, and then resolution or mass communication from there again.
I think there's this interesting cliche of sort of when you have to communicate these things, like communicate it until you're really sick of talking about it. That means it's maybe just starting to get across. And I heard a good bit of advice recently, which was like, talk about it until one person complains that you're talking about it too much. And if one person is complaining that it's too much, that means the other 99% are just starting to hear it. And I think that's a really...
You're so right. It's funny, you upload something on Family and you'll get the same parents interacting. And that's, it's always the exact same ones. So it's not those ones I'm worried about. Right. It's the ones that aren't interacting that you need to get that information across to. I mean, it's quite a while ago now, but we moved, we just relocated one of our nurseries, same vicinity, just a new building. And we did a whole thing, videos, floor plans, send parents all the information. This is when we're moving, big open day, blah, 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 blah. And on the day we moved, a parent went to our old nursery and said, I didn't realise that affected me. And we were like, what do you think we've been doing for the past 6-7 months? All this information. So you're right. There's the target communication isn't at those parents that are interacting all the time. It's about getting it to the parents in a capacity that don't necessarily interact enough so they can get their thoughts across is really important.
Was that plug number 4? I think it was plug number 4, wasn't it?
Did I plug? I don't even remember plugging. It's
just, you said post on Family. I'm counting it.
So sorry, it's just part of me now.
Psst, Julia.
Yes.
I'm a little embarrassed, but I don't really know what Matt means when he talks about grey zones.
Okay, I mean, I can explain it, but we don't have to whisper. People are listening anyway. Okay, so Matt actually uses the Family app, as he mentioned.
As you should do. Tiny Jet Podcast sponsored by Family.
Okay, then you can go into the Family app and look at the room planner, and you can see how many children are due in, and then compare that to how many staff you have scheduled. It's really easy to see if you're over or understaffed, which means you know that you have occupancy waiting to be filled in those areas, right? So you can look by session, you can look by time, and in order to find out where you have those areas that you can fill, you can just see if you're over or understaffed.
Oh, that's great.
Super easy.
Let's get back to the episode.
Let's get back to it. You've spoken a little bit about leadership. Well, a lot about leadership, actually. So we are moving on to everyone's favourite segment, the bit where we ask you to blind rank something. Now, you said you watched our previous episode, so do you know what a blind rank is? Are you prepared?
Yeah, 1 through 5.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So.
Do you want me to? But the problem is, I'll probably forget what I've said.
No, I'm on remembering.
Oh, you're on that. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm asking you to blind rank cringeworthy leadership and management phrases.
Oh God.
So these are the cliches that.
As per my previous email.
Yeah, exactly.
So 5 is most hated. 1 is I can just about deal with it.
Right. So I've got to be also a little bit careful because I am sitting next to my manager. So
some of these oh God, yeah, awkward.
Anyway, so the first cliche, cringeworthy management phrase that you need to rank is, let's not reinvent the wheel. let's not reinvent the wheel here, guys.
That is a bad one. I wouldn't. Yeah, that is bad. It's quite passive aggressive as well.
Isn't it just?
Yeah, let's go for. Well, yeah. Let's go mid-table. 3.
Ooh, okay. Number 3. Okay.
Let's not reinvent the wheel. 3.
The next one is, we can go after the low-hanging fruit.
These are all awful.
Aren't they?
Yeah.
The low-hanging fruit.
I feel like there's worse ones though. I'm gonna go 4.
Okay.
Yeah. That was pointed. I say low-hanging fruit way too often.
You said that to me as well, actually.
This is just my way of just getting some things off my chest, I think.
Just literally live feedback to me through the podcast. Appreciate it, Julia.
So the other thing that Matt says too much is, let's circle back.
Do I say that?
No, you don't.
I don't think
just
I
winding
say
you
that.
up. No. Let's circle back.
I don't mind circle back.
Oh, Matt loves it.
What's good? 5 good. Have we got that right?
No. 1 and 2 is good.
One's good. One's fine. Circle back.
Okay, let's circle back.
Wow, you heard it here first. Matt Martin loves
I
circling
like to
back.
circle back.
He loves circling back. This guy. Okay, number 4 is this really moving the needle?
Right, yeah. Give that number 5.
Oh, hates it. Hates moving the needle.
What needle we move? Look, guys, come on. We're not. We're not.
But it's not even come
He doesn't want to move the needle.
Is it
Doesn't wanna
like?
move the needle. Well, it's from measuring gauges, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, when things are moving the needle towards one direction or the other.
Yeah.
I thought it was from. I thought it'd be like the earthquakes. You know, it's not even registering. You know.
Oh, but also it could be a compass needle, right? Is this
Could be
moving the
could be any needle.
Well, this is why
I think it's like that sort of
I imagined it
old-style
on a
phonograph type.
Yeah, I imagined it like a measuring dial, but it just goes to show it's not very good if none of us have a similar interpretation.
It's definitely not a sewing metaphor.
Oh, okay, right. I'm gonna have to take a run up because this is just makes my skin crawl.
Oh God.
Okay, so number 5 is let's touch base.
Yeah, it's not great. It's not great. It's not great. What's left there, Matt?
Number 2.
Number two. I mean, I don't want to circle back and touch base, but it's going to go number 2.
So we've got number 1 most liked is let's circle back.
Yeah, I love circling back.
Great.
Then
Love it.
Matt's touching base a lot. he's not reinventing the wheel at number 3. We're moving the needle at number. Oh no. Low hanging fruit was number 4, and moving the needle was number 5.
I'm not a fan of moving the needle.
Beautiful.
No. Okay, you feel like you're happy with that?
Yeah, I'm happy with that. Yeah.
I'm so glad we touched base about it.
Yeah, I'm glad. Yeah.
Oh, I'm glad I got to circle back to that list at the end.
Oh,
It was low hanging fruit, really.
You know what? Let's not reinvent the wheel. Let's carry on with the next bit of the podcast.
So I feel like I'm trapped in LinkedIn. This is. Oh goodness me! I have a question. Now we've covered all your best leadership phrases. Where do you start when you're making a change? So you've come to a decision. You know it's going to be potentially unpopular. It's going to be difficult. It's going to take a lot of work. What's the first thing you're doing to start communicating that out to parents, to staff?
I mean, before I even consider communication, I think I've touched on it before, but our industry is very unique that we've got customer client. You know, we've got paying customer who wants a service for what they're paying for, and we've got client, aka the child, who wants a completely different thing. They want high quality early years education. You know, so what's really frustrating about that is they're both, in my opinion, often not in sync very much. So when you're making a decision or you're looking to change something, you're often impacting one or the other. And it's sort of understanding what that impact is and who it's impacting. I mean, a lot of decisions that we've made have been so child-centric and focused and care and early years education focused that it's often the parent, unfortunately, that's getting the brunt of it. But
although, of course, they are incentivized to have as great, but
Absolutely. There's no doubt. I mean, this is like the long-term thinking. Is the higher quality provision you offer, the more sustainable your business is over the long term. But in that moment, taking things away from parents who signed up to you maybe for that reason is a difficult decision to make. So, what I've done, or what I do often, is I write child on the left hand side, and I write parent on the right hand side, but then I also write staff and at the top, make a little triangle, right? And when I think about decisions I want to implement, what I do is I then circle the person that it positively impacts. Not negatively, positively impacts. And, so our 5:30 finishes, positively impact our staff. Obviously, they get paperwork time. It positively impacts children, in my opinion, because staff are getting time to actually do their job.
I guess most of the time, if it's positively impacting staff, it's kind of by its very nature positively impacting the children, right?
Exactly, exactly. So it's and then what that allows me to do is to understand not only the end goal, but the benefit of that end goal. And then I can look at the negative side of it, which is the parent side, and I can go to those people and I can come up with a sort of communication strategy that highlights the positives. Who is this impacting? Why are we doing it? And what's the long-term benefit of that? I think it's very rare that you'll circle all three. I think when you're implementing something, it's very, very difficult to get all three. There's things that you can, but I think there'll always be an impact on one of those three sort of primary targets, and it's understanding what positives there are and communicating those positives to the people who are going to be negatively impacted potentially.
I love that. That was so concise. Beautiful.
Very concise. I'm going to be using that triangle in my own day-to-day life.
Well, the other thing I wanted to ask, related to kind of conveying information about changes you want to make, is you, as yet, are not completely in charge of a setting.
No.
So when you are thinking, oh my gosh, I have a brilliant idea, but I need to get buy-in from my managers, my leadership, how's the best way to do that?
I think that, I mean, the managers at Little Beehive they're so great. I mean, they're like, they're the most forward-thinking, proactive managers that, you could ask for. So we're very lucky to have them. And it's funny because I phone them up out of the blue and they always know I'm going to ask something stupid. because something's annoying me and I'm like, I just want to know, and they're like, because I'm not in the nursery, so I don't know. I think this is really silly, but like we were looking at how we could get outdoor toilets in our gardens, and I think there was like you could do non-composting, you could do composting toilets without needing planning permission or something like that, whatever it was. And I just phoned them up, I was like, how many poos do you think the preschool room do a day?
You could probably find that out on Family Method.
Yeah, well, exactly, yeah.
We've got our intro clip, Mikkel.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, perfect. Great, excellent. But I think it just comes down to like that base level communication again of getting their opinion on it straight away. There's so many things that we've thought about doing that we just haven't done because it's just not the right time for it, or it's just not a high priority, or it just doesn't work. So sit in your office all you want and do your little triangle and come up with an idea. But until you actually, go to the managers and say, here's what I'm thinking, and get their feedback, you're not going to go anywhere with it. So, yeah, I mean, I can't stress enough, like, I do surveys, communicate with staff, communicate with managers, communicate all the time, because it just allows you to build a better picture of what's needed and what is actually viable, etc. So, yeah, that communication with them is really important.
What was the answer?
Can't remember. I just kind of raised it from my memory. I think the short end of the buck it was less than 200. So we could do the toilet.
The short end of the buck.
Need some more fibre in their diets.
Yeah, clearly.
More Weetabix. Wow.
Go on.
Well, now I've forgotten what I was going to ask. With all that excitement, go on, you go, and
All right, then. I can go. No, I was going to ask about that idea of like, I think just a reflection from me was it's also about making sure you get that feedback on different levels. Like I remember I got when it was a talk once about this where they were sort of saying you need like quantitative feedback through surveys where you can gather everything together, but it's quite shallow. And you also need to talk to people and have talked to someone for half an hour and sense check things. And I think sometimes people get caught in like, I'm going to organize this feedback in a very proper way, and your job is to be the kind of person who conveys all those different kinds of feedback, like lengthy conversations, quantitative surveys, snippets that are heard, etc. And then you can kind of pull that together into like the right answer.
The most important form of feedback is casual feedback. Like that is what I like. That's the bedrock of like every decision that we've ever made is just passive conversations with either staff or parents. And I always try and avoid, so if there's a specific thing we're introducing and we have to go through the sort of rigmarole of communication with that, that's great. But I really enjoy getting parents one-on-one just to have a chat. A couple of months ago, I just opened up my diary on Google meetings and just offered them half an hour slots to parents, and I just said, "Come have a chat." And it was so interesting getting just like things. A lot of it was just parents misunderstanding things potentially. They were just like wanting clarity. Some of them just wanted me to explain their invoice to them. We've got a head office team that can do that, but they just took that half an hour because I was there and I explained their invoice to them. But it's just those casual conversations that are really important for understanding what's going on at your nursery, and just getting that understanding, from parents. And then I think focusing, if there's a running theme, then focusing your comms on that and getting the feedback in a more sort of structured manner. But yeah, just can't express enough that.
And I guess remembering that that's like a multiplier, right? Because parents talk to each other, right? So if you can convince one person, that's then they will talk to 5 people. They might be the person who can then help to convey that message out into the outside world. Some of those parents that maybe you're talking about that are harder to reach.
I mean, the parents they've all got their own little WhatsApp groups now. Preschool WhatsApp, babies WhatsApp, etc. So this information travels quickly, and that's why those and the worst thing that you can do is let misinformation or misunderstanding sort of cycle. You sort of but you only know if there's that information going around if you're proactively talking to people. I mean, staff are great as well because they speak to the parents as well. So if you speak to them on a daily basis or as often as you can, staff members say, "Oh, so and so said this," and you go, well, that's not quite right, and you can sort of intervene early on before it gets out of hand, basically. So yeah, it's that it's getting the momentum before it sort of gets out of hand.
I had one final question I wanted before we moved on to the agony.
Go on.
Can I go?
Yes, go on.
I just maybe sort of to summarize, like imagine someone listening to this who is either new into a role or maybe they're just like, I'm really ready to change some stuff up. Like, how would you look at sort of what things they should focus on first? Like, can you elevate it to sort of the broad categories of like, here are the 4 or 5 things you should deep dive into, which are going to give the most kind of bang for your buck?
Almost certainly the understanding the ratios and understanding like the fabric of your business is the most important thing. You know, the sessions you're offering, how they're impacting each other.
Yeah.
Check that on Family. You can do that on I call them grey zones. Go and see where you can't book kids in because
Plug 5.
got them blocked out. You know, and once you've got the fabric of it done through those 2 things, the ratio and other thing, you know, then go and look at the most important part of your business is your team. So talk to your team and ask what they want and what they want to make their job better. Because if you can get them to enjoy their job more, enjoy working with you in your company more, you're going to retain them, and that's the most important part. And then once you've kind of got those things done, then you can maybe look at the much bigger things. You know, the in-service days, the closure days, 5:30, etc. So start from the bedrock and work your way up. It would be my advice.
Fantastic.
Fabulous. Right, we have the Agony Uncle section.
Agony Uncle.
Well, we had Agony Aunt Alice, didn't we? And Agony Aunt Alison. So now we've got Agony Uncle
the
Matt.
first you've kind of ruined our whole A.
I know. I'm sorry, Ali. My background's rubbish compared to theirs. So
I know. That's okay. What can you do? It's hard to fit you in the screen, you know.
Yeah, I know. Sorry. Yeah.
Exactly. So this is a doozy, and I'm so glad that this has been asked because we've talked so much about the tough decisions that you've made. But anyway, I'll read it for you. So when you're the setting manager, especially at a single site setting, you have to be the villain and the hero. So you make the unpopular choices, but you also solve all the problems. And you actually have spoken about, making these choices and getting everyone on board. However, if you're the manager who has to do both of those things and maintain your relationship with parents and make these tough decisions, how on earth do you find that balance?
And I think that's why a lot of nurseries don't make big decisions and they end up in the spiral, because it's such a, you have to try and maintain the relationships. You like I said, you might be running on fine margins as it is, so a big decision, you're terrified about doing it. It just comes down to transparency and honesty and, explaining to parents why you're doing it, what the end goal is going to be. Not many parents will ever argue if your end goal is to improve outcomes for children and their child specifically, and it's getting that across to them. Their immediate reaction is going to think about what's negatively impacting them, but you need to explain to them the positives down the line, and how it'll impact their child or the setting as a whole or whatever it might be.
What a
great way! What a great way to finish, I guess.
Thanks
Shall
guys.
we encourage Matt to plug things that he wants to plug?
Oh gosh,
you've already plugged Family a lot.
Yeah, I've plugged Family. Yeah, I mean great. It's a great opportunity. We're there's an exciting new project coming up that we're starting. Well, I'm
So
starting.
excited.
So Julie and Matt have seen it. So their enthusiasm will hopefully be enough to let everyone know that it's pretty cool.
that's good.
I'm excited about it. We're a bit early to announce it fully yet, but
Teaser.
I know, a teaser, but
love that.
we're jumping into the software field, not trying to compete with Family in any way. We would never do that to our guys at Family. You're far too important to me. But yeah, if you're interested in just keeping up with what's going on, then get me on LinkedIn, and hopefully you'll be seeing more of me, and maybe I'll have Matt and Julia on my podcast at some point.
I hope so.
That would be good. So yeah, thank you very much, guys.
I think that's a good shout. If you're interested in being one of those people who tries out new stuff that's going on out there, I think Matt's project is in such an early phase. Of course, he doesn't want to talk about it too much, but I think hitting you up on LinkedIn and maybe getting an early
100%.
invite is probably the right way to go. And type Matt Martin in, ignore the ice hockey player, find the tall Scottish man.
Add him if you want. He's a handsome guy.
He's a handsome guy. You
Why
might
not?
learn a bit about
It's
the
a
NHL.
twofer.
Yeah,
It's a two for one.
A couple of Matt Martins on your LinkedIn.
Now then, should we say goodbye?
I think we should say goodbye. Oh, of course. The only thing we absolutely want to say is we want to hear from you. We have this wonderful email address. We have a couple of emails in there, but I want more. So if you do have insights, things you want to tell us about, guests you want us to have on, or questions, please do let us know on tinychairpod@family.co.uk. That's tinychairpod@family.family.co.uk. We want to hear from you. Matt, thanks so much. Such
Thank
a
you,
great
guys.
chat.
Yeah,
I think we're going
thank
to
you.
change the world. Hopefully some great advice out there for some people who are really looking forward.
Yep, it's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you so much, guys.
Bye.
Bye. Hot diggity dog! What a pod!
That's nice. I'm glad we shifted over so that you do the outro first bit. Hot diggity dog. That's way better than what I've been doing.
Right?
Yeah. And what about Matt, huh? He was great.
He was also great.
Super actionable. I loved his advice about communication, getting it right with parents, exploring the why. Very good. And that triangle, I'm going to be using that.
Yeah, I think it was brilliant. And I'm really pleased we had him on. I think he was a wonderful guest.
Totally agree. And the second best Matt we've ever had on this pod, so that's nice.
Second,
Definitely.
sure,
Yeah,
okay.
Sure.
What if people want to get in touch with us?
Well, you can, as ever, please, and we'd like you to, get in touch with us on tinysharepod@family.co.uk and, send us your good news, your celebrations, and who do we want to celebrate this week?
I think we want to celebrate everyone.
Yeah, agreed.
We know things are a little bit tough out there at the moment. You've got the national insurance increase, you've got the minimum wage increase, you've got the slightly stricter guidelines around funding. We know that there is a lot happening right now. Our inbox is always open, tinysharepod@family.co. And if you're a family customer, you can head into Village.
Absolutely.
Just have a chat with everyone.
Loads of great
in
conversations happening in there, aren't there?
There. It's true. We're all here for you. We're all on your side, and we know things are tough, but we'll get through it together.
Big love. How do the kids do that? It's a heart thing. That's not going to translate well on the video.
Yeah, for the audio listeners, Matt did a very
heart.
questionable gesture
Very
there that
questionable
was
heart.
supposed to be a heart.
Yeah.
Okay.
Not great. Not my best. Oh, and please give us a rating, a review.
Yes.
We're currently on 4.2 stars out of 5. I think that means someone's given us a 1.
Yeah, some cheeky little oik out there has given us a 1 star.
I'm watching
So,
you.
yeah, if you know who that was, get in touch.
Tinysharepod@family.co.uk.
We just wanna talk.
Yeah, we just want to
We just want to talk. But yeah, give us a review, like and subscribe. It really does help. And
See you next time.
wait, no, wait,
What?
wait. Don't you press pause yet. Matt, where can they find us?
They will see us next time at the Nursery World's Big Day Out on the 16th of May.
Hey! So if you are in London, if you're going to Nursery World's Big Day Out, you can come and find us. We won't have the tiny chairs with us, sadly, but we'll be in the arena somewhere around the family stand,
chats.
probably having
Doing
chats.
interviews.
Yeah, come and say hi. We'd
Nice.
love to meet you.
And you'll get to meet Mickle. That's the most exciting thing.
Oh my gosh, Mickle's going to be there.
Mickle's gonna
yeah,
be there.
we've talked
So-
about him every episode so far. You might actually get to see him
Yeah.
in the flesh. Face reveal. That's what they call it, right?
I think so.
That's what the online kids call it.
See you next time.
Bye.